All right, good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. First thing this morning, it is still morning, right? We have Wendy Peloquin. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. She is with AVINEON. She is the business development manager with over 14 years of experience in the geospatial industry. Wendy has a bachelor's degree in geography and a certificate in GIS from University of Georgia and a master's in GIS administration from the University of West Florida. She's an active member of the EURISA International and currently serves as an instructor for the GIS Leadership Academy. That sounds interesting. Well, please do. So I will turn it over to Wendy.
Thank you, Sally. Appreciate everybody joining us this morning. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite features when using field maps. Next slide, please. So before we jump into that, I'm going to do a brief introduction to AVINEON. I know this is a new name for a lot of people here, but there are some familiar faces. Talk a little bit about what field maps is and what to look out for, and then how to use the barcodes with field maps, and then do a quick demo to show you how easy it will be for your mobile workers. Next slide, please. So AVINEON is a GIS services company, providing services for a little over 30 years now. We do have a global presence with over 900 employees worldwide, and we are an Esri and an FME safe software partner. We are headquartered in McLean, Virginia, but I think one of the biggest things this year when we have grown is we acquired Highland Mapping in Banner Elk, so we do have a large North Carolina presence. For those of you who've been coming to the conference for years and around the North Carolina GIS group, I know a lot of you are familiar with Kent Rothrock. So Kent and his team have joined us, and we're really excited to continue to grow and work with them. And in addition to some of the traditional managed services and GIS services that Kent and his team provided, we also provide pretty much anything you need to do with GIS. We focus a lot on utility network and parcel fabric migrations. We also provide strategic planning, implementations, integrations, as well as documentation. And so tomorrow, Kent and I will also be presenting. So definitely make sure and join us. Next. So before we jump into field maps, I want to remind everyone, if you do not know or have not heard or forgotten, that Collector was deprecated in December of last year. And this really means that Esri is going to no longer provide technical support. So if you are using Collector and you haven't made that migration to field maps, definitely start now planning and making that migration, because also starting on November of this year, Collector Classic, you'll see there are quite a few of the other apps that will no longer be available in the App Store to be able to download. So you'll want to make sure and, get ahead of that before you have to. I have included a link to the migration guide from Esri. That's also something that we can help with if you need help with that. But really just, start thinking about migrating those field solutions. And so the next part of the presentation throughout that, I'm going to talk a lot about field maps. And so field maps really combined a lot of the functionality of these separate maps that are listed here. Next slide, please. So field maps, really the purpose of that was to kind of have an all-in-one place to be able to take it out in the field for your mobile team to collect the data, to be able to track them, and really just consolidate what was going on. This is all managed by your user type. For those of you who have started looking into it, Esri had a field worker, and that has also been renamed to the mobile worker. So as you're attending presentations, I know there's a couple on mobile workflows this afternoon that Peter will be presenting. You'll definitely hear mobile worker and field, to replace field worker. But, one of the big things about field maps is using smart forms to be able to set up for them to use it in the field. And that's really their layout. And it is different than Survey 123. So for those of you familiar or using Survey 123, it will continue to be separate and not incorporated into field maps. And, the smart forms are really using a database schema. And you're able to, use that when you're setting up your forms, what you want to have to be collected. And, Survey 123 uses more kind of like an Excel spreadsheet version. And so that's going to continue as is. But one of the other big benefits of field maps, while it may not be new functionality, is also the ability to collect data disconnected when you're out in the field. We know there are a lot of areas that as much as, technology has grown and people are connected, that there's just not service. And when people are making that move to these mobile workflows, just given the advances in technology, you can now use your smartphones. And so being able to use those consolidated devices or hook up the GPS to the smartphone and be able to use field maps is a great benefit that a lot are using. So definitely if you have areas within your organization that you don't have service, don't worry. There's a couple different ways that you can accomplish the disconnected editing, whether it's through setting that up in the office before you go out in the field, or once you go out in the field before you lose service, you can do that and then go back and sync it back into the office when you get your service. All right, next slide, please. So one of my favorite advances with the technology, and one of the things that you can use with field maps, is integrating barcodes. One of the biggest complaints that a lot of people have when their team is starting to go out in the field and collect this data mobily is, oh, I don't want to have to type this in, or I'm wearing gloves and that's a small screen and what am I going to do? Or when you have free text, you have no idea what they are going to type in. And so that's a lot of other processes that you're going to have to put in place, reviewing that data and QA QCing before you push that to your production database. So Barcodes really allows you to streamline that and also automate a lot of that data that is being populated. And one thing I do also want to mention, and it's not just barcodes, but you can also create your own QR codes with data that if there is something specific to your organization or assets, program that and then put that in for use with field maps. And so with all these different barcodes, the one thing is you just have to configure it when you're setting it up in your workflow. But one other piece that I do want to mention is going to be a big part of that is using arcade expressions. So if you're not yet familiar with arcade, it's really a programming language to help do some calculations on the back end. Start getting familiar with it, but it isn't too cumbersome. It is something that, a lot of people are able to pick up very quickly. And so here is an example of, you'll see there's a gas junction, a pipeline barcode that a lot of organizations are going out and using in the field, putting those on their assets. And then on above the gas pipeline, you'll see that's actually from field maps right there, the facility ID, and to the right, there's a little barcode picture. And really all you do is press that and use your camera button. Next slide, please. So here is an example from the American Society for Testing and Materials. And so what they have done is they've really standardized a lot of the information. This is an example from the gas industry on their assets. So you'll see here that they've gone in and actually have a database that shows things such as their material, lot number, production, date, and they're providing that. So if you buy, I'm just going to make it simple and use this example, like a box of valves, they're all the same thing, the same size, and then they're able to put this barcode and that information is pre-configured to that barcode for those assets. And so they do provide that data dictionary online for free so that then you can take that when you're setting up field maps. That's that schema that you'll put in. So then anytime out in the field, when they scan that specific barcode, that information will automatically populate for your team members. And so there are a lot of companies out there that are doing this and doing a lot of that work for you. You still got to, go in and configure it, like I said, but there's a lot of information that's readily available. And this is something that over the next, couple of years, it's only going to continue to grow and there's going to be more demand and more information out there. And so another thing as well to consider is when you're setting this up in field maps, you can choose what data you need. Just because all the data is being provided doesn't mean that your organization necessarily needs all of it or even showing that in the form. So there's a lot of flexibility, but this is something, as I mentioned, you're also able to, if you know how to do it, program and use your own QR codes. You would be developing something similar like this for a data dictionary in your database to be able to use for pulling that information. But this is just, one example. And another thing to also mention on the barcodes is that it can either be one barcode for kind of all assets. Like I mentioned, you may have a box of, it's all the same fitting or whatever it is, and they're the same size, manufactured the same date. It's all one thing. So the barcode number is going to be the same, and you're just going to put that on all those assets, or you can develop something that's unique and that's, individual for something specific. So you have multiple options on how you can use and how you can incorporate that for your organization and what'll work best. All right, next slide, please. And so there are a couple of steps before you can just start using this out in the field. The first thing you're going to have to do is publish all the necessary data layers and save a web map. And you can do this using Portal or ArcGIS Online, depending on what you're utilizing in your organization. And then from the web map, you'll be able to configure your pop-ups, your symbology, and that's also where you will set up your arcade instructions to do those calculations that we were talking about earlier. So there is a little bit of work, but it's not, too cumbersome to get it going. And really, once you're able, then you'll be able to, smartphone, sorry, I need way more coffee this morning. So the image you're seeing right there is just what it looks like when you are going to go in and set that up and configure it. You can see they have the different IDs, as well as you can decide what information is going to be required, what information is optional, what information is going to be populated, or that they're going to even have the authority to type in themselves and setting up all of your domains. And so really, once all of that is set up and it's configured, your team is ready to go out in the field and start collecting that information. So next slide, please. And can you please play the demo? So they're going to switch over real quick and bring up a demo. And so this is really just meant to be a very quick demo showing you somebody out in the field going and yep, we are started. So you can see they have the points where they need to do their inspections. They're going to select them. And then once they get out there, they're going to add the materials for what was installed, because they're verifying what was put in the ground. You can see here this table pops up. They scan the barcode, and that's going to pull, this is from the example I was showing you earlier, a lot of that information. And you can see here what's been noted as a manual entry, what's required for the person out in the field to put in, which is all customizable based on what you need for your organization. Submitting that, and then now when they save it, you can see here all of that information. You didn't see it on the form, but that's what was populated from the barcode itself. So that's a lot to have to type in or use drop-down numbers. And you saw easily, the entire demo took less than 60 seconds for them out in the field. Once they're at that point, they can scan it, they can enter in the information they need, go about their day to the next thing that they need to do. So it's really increasing the integrity of your data, as well as streamlining the process and being a lot more efficient for what they're collecting in the field. So I know it was really short and sweet, but really just want to talk a little bit about field maps. Make sure if you haven't made that jump yet, if you're using Collector, it's being deprecated, but you'll also no longer be able to download it. Or for those of you who haven't started mobile workflows yet, really wanted to show you how easy this could be to set up, to get to your team, to start collecting this data, doing inspections, and then how you can streamline it and make it very easy for them. So we know, a lot of people don't like change. So this is definitely something that, change management, doing something a little bit different than what they've done. So plan ahead for that. But it's really a great feature that you're able to do, and it's all free as long as you have your licenses and maintenance and everything is up to date. It just takes a little bit to get set up on the front end. Any questions? Yes. The question was if they had any application recommendations for creating the barcodes. I do not personally. Is there anybody in the room who's actually created their own barcodes or has any recommendations? Most of the organizations we're working with right now are using the pre-configured ones, like what I have shown. But I do know there's lots of if you do a Google search, there are a lot of options out there for being able to take a look at, ones to create QR codes. I know a lot of people are doing it in other capacities, so it's definitely out there, and they're doing it for free. A lot of brains. All right, any other questions? Yes. So the question was, when using Collector, it's quite easy to set up an external GPS device. And if it is just as easy, or if there's anything extra you have to do to use it with Field Maps. Field Maps is just as easy. You can integrate any of those external devices like an EOS or a Trimble. You know, if you're just using a smartphone or a tablet, you're limited by the accuracy of that itself. But going in, it's a setting and a configuration that you have to set up to attach it to whatever device that you're using. So it's simple, just like the other ones. I know when Field Maps first came out, it was a little bit tricky, but I think Esri's really worked to streamline that and make it easy. All right, any other questions? Nope, no other questions? Okay.
When setting up offline collection, do you find that Field Maps is about the same amount of staff investment in setting up the offline collection versus Collector?
I can't personally speak from experience on that, but from our team who does set it up, it's very easy. A lot of the organizations that we're helping with the mobile workflows, they do have areas where they don't have service. And like I mentioned, there's two different options. You can even set it up out in the field and download that to your device of selecting a certain area if they know there's going to be one place. Or if they get out and realize, oh, well, I know if I'm going to go here, I'm not going to be able to collect that data. They can then select that, set up the disconnected editing before they leave their service area, then go back and set that up in the field. So there's multiple ways to do it, but from our team who's going out, they're saying it is very easy to set up. And once you learn how to do it and have those steps, you don't think about it again. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Hope you all have a good day.